Hello, we are Geeks Assembled, and we've gathered here once again today. And tonight we're going to talk about a film, and it is 2001's A Space Odyssey. And let's jump straight to it. Let's go to Alex and Susan and see what their opening thoughts on this film are.
All right. Well, the object of the game is to bang the bones together, kids. This is a visual feast. It starts off in the old style with an overture, and then it goes into the movie, and then it goes into a long sort of build up to the appearance of the first monolith, and the first monolith appears in the middle of this tribe that has been, interacting with other tribes, and, then the monolith appears, and slowly they come in, and then they touch it, and then they're changed, and they start eating meat, and they start banging bones together, and they eventually kill another tribe, one of the other tribe people, and so that's interesting. And I think from that, extrapolate that all the way to the end of the film. It's a story of the evolution of humanity, or of life in the universe, actually, from primitive to near spacefaring, when they go to the moon and they discover this other obelisk, and when that other obelisk happens, it sends a signal, a strong signal, a signal that suddenly they can trace to Jupiter. And then when they get to Jupiter, it's crazy. The one thing that I don't like about this movie is that they missed the whole part where Dave Bowman, Dr. Dave Bowman from the Jupiter expedition, he says, "My God, it's full of stars." And that when you read that in the book, it takes your breath away, makes you cry, makes you laugh, makes you scream. It does so much stuff, but you don't see that in the movie, and it's kind of weird. Anyway, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie, and it's by Stanley Kubrick, and some brilliant people were involved, and yeah. So here's Alex. Speaking of brilliant people.
Well, again, it's visually a very pretty movie. It did sort of remind me, I think George Lucas might have taken a little bit of inspiration from this. Not only the starry backgrounds and the floating in space and the music, even though it is different. But I remember when
starry backgrounds, that's just what space looks like.
I know, but it does remind me of a Star Wars movie. The original ones, not the prequels. No, but it's the same idea. It's the same, visual in that respect. Also, when one of the characters says, "I have a bad feeling about it," I said, no, you're saying it wrong. Star Wars. But I do like Arthur C. Clarke, but he's not one of my favorite science fiction writers. And I do think the movie's overlong, but I did like HAL 9000. And, of course, Knight Rider stole from that, of course, too, I'm sure. But I am glad I saw this movie. But like I said, it's not one of my favorites. I'd rather be watching something else. Plus, I'm more of a sci-fi TV person. And it does look great on TV, though. I mean, it's quite a feast visually.
Yeah.
And the other thing, we were actually showing the video versions that we have, and I'm almost starting to wonder if, like Close Encounters, there's unofficially 7, but 3 officially you can buy now. and I don't remember the TV versions because I wasn't a big fan of this movie. But my mother was, and she also had the books. And the books were a little bit more in-depth. It explained the characters a little better than the movie did.
Yeah, I can't imagine this film being a book. But let's go Lee, since he's going to press the unmute button.
Well, it was a short novel by Arthur C. Clarke. It was called Sentinel. But Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke co-wrote this movie together based on that short novel. So Stanley Kubrick most probably had some more input into expanding it out. Yeah, as it's been said, visually it's awesome. It's well in advance of technology. I mean, it's just amazing. You think, how did they do that? How it just, there's some scenes in this movie. It's ahead of its time. This is 1960s.
Yeah, it's a bit above your 1960s Doctor Who, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying, at the time when they were making movies like this, this is far superior to what they were making back then, and it still stands up today. Just the scenery, the spacecrafts, the things inside the spacecrafts, the people walking along around the walls into the other. That is, how do they do that? It just makes you wonder. And if you've noticed, there isn't much talking in this movie. It's very, it's more classical music all the way through, and then there's a little bit of talking here, a little bit of talking there. But it's, as Susan said, it starts from the dawn of man, and as soon as the monolith appears, it sort of changes the development of the apes. And it goes along. So it's a story about how this monolith has changed mankind. But it's an enjoyable journey all the way through it. I agree with Alex. It is a bit long in running time. But when you get to the end of the movie, I mean, with Hal the computer, I mean, Hal has become an iconic cinema just because of the voice, really, and just deadpan voice. But when you get to the trippy thing through space, that's where it all what's going on here, and it's open to different people's interpretation of what is happening. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's a little bit long for me. There is a few things in it what sort of do need explaining, but it's an enjoyable ride. So that's my opening thoughts for now.
Yeah, that's all that counts, as long as you enjoyed it, isn't it? Let's go to Texas, Tim.
Yeah, it's an excellent movie. It's a very much a product of its time, but it's also a product that's ahead of its time. As Susan pointed out, it's all about the evolution of man, from the earliest to what may or may not be the future of, and it's done in such a way that it implies that there's an alien influence of the development of mankind, or is it some kind of religious influence? All those are questions that are left unanswered, which is great because it's a very ambiguous film. It's not. It raises lots of questions but doesn't answer them. It leaves it up to the viewer to decide, and I think that's the best kind of movie you can have, really, in a lot of ways. Because here we are, 50 years later, still talking about it and trying to figure out what it all means. And I think that's great. As Lee pointed out, the special effects are very far ahead of their time. I think it's very meticulously done. One thing that Kubrick did so well was show you how silent and deadly and cold and big space is. I mean, it literally takes them 18 months to get to Jupiter, apparently, and it's they're on a mission where, of course, they sleep a lot of the time because they're just there. It's strange. the plot is very strange because it starts out as one thing and it kind of shifts into another, obviously, with the transition into the future. And then, of course, you have a sudden plot about a computer that goes rogue and murders everybody or tries to. And it's a very interesting film in that sense. It's very suspenseful, actually, when you get to the bit with Hal reading their lips while they're discussing what the hell are they going to do to get out of this situation they're in now because the computer's working against them. And that's very suspenseful, I think. And it's done in such a way. It's done very well. But you do, when you get to that, what kind of movie is this? I mean, you start to think about where are we going with all this? Because it does transition into so many different things, and it leaves so many questions unanswered. But I think that's what makes it a great film.
Yep, thank you. Let's go to somebody who was actually there at the time. Let's go to Beef Dad, who was around when the monolith was first discovered.
Yes, when it was brought out, the publicity for it was phenomenal, and I actually took my father to see it. I was 20 years old, and I took my father to see it, and he loved it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the bit with the monkeys. That was yeah, they were not necessarily peaceful before the arrival of the monolith, but after the arrival of the monolith, they learnt to
Hey,
It froze.
still froze. Fuck's sake.
Margaret Tyzack, who was known for playing elderly women on television. And the extraordinary thing, of course, was later on in my career, when I was in my late 20s, I got to meet Robert Beatty because I was working with his wife. His wife was my boss's PA.
Oh, wait a minute.
So I got to meet him. I got to ask him about it, and he said yes, they really enjoyed doing that. But the bugger for them all was the spacesuits.
Susie, remember I said I bought some?
They got very hot in them. Yeah, and the space child at the very end really got me. It's all very disconcerting.
It's recorded.
Oh, it's recording now again. It's back on.
Had it stopped recording when I was talking? I don't know.
Just a moment!
Yeah, I think it did. I think Susan and Alex froze and then it stopped recording.
So at what point did it stop recording?
I'm not too sure.
We don't really know. Can you hear us?
Oh, well.
Can you hear us?
Alex and Susan, are you there?
Can you hear us?
I don't think they're there. See, is this even recording now? I know it says recording, but if their screen's frozen, is it still recording?
No. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Okay, so, well, during the week we're going to have to try to
Yeah, just about, yeah.
up to work. And if not, then that means that either something's wrong with Zoom or the computer can't take it, and it just keeps logging out. I mean, unless you can get on the phone and figure out if
It's Hal. It's got to be Hal.
Yeah. Unless you want to go to the phone and see if they have an outage.
Getting his revenge.
Yeah, well,
It's recording again.
I'm off the internet on my phone.
I know that, but I'm just saying. Because my tablet's off, so I can't check my tablet on it.
It just sounds like a broken Cyberman.
As long as it
Yes.
doesn't happen all the time.
Only about 6 years or so after I'd seen it, I've got to meet Robert Beatty because I was working with his wife, who was the PA for the boss of my company, and really nice lady. And yeah, he was saying that they all loved doing it, but the one thing that made it difficult for them was the spacesuits. They were very hot inside the spacesuits and sweating and but yeah, I love the sort of, basically it's evolution, the evolution of it, and the evolution of mankind, and then you get the space child at the very end, which for me was a real piece of magic. That really was a real piece of magic, and it was just so beautifully filmed. Yeah, I thought, yeah, as I say, Hal was very good. The running around inside, that was really very clever. What they did was they had something that rotated so that he was able to run. That was very cleverly done. And yeah, there was just some very, very magical moments in it, and some super effects that they are not overly dramatic. They just keep the whole thing moving along at a gentle pace. And yeah, it is rather a long film, which is why, like other long films, they actually put an intermission in the middle, so everybody had the chance to have a rest, relax, go for a pee, whatever. But yeah, excellent. And as I say, the music, brilliant. Dad loved it. And I bought him the LP of the soundtrack, which he used to play practically every Saturday. And yes, the space parts, excellent. I loved the space station. It's just really good. I also, the other thing that always got me was the pods from the Jupiter craft. They were so brilliantly designed, and they worked. They seemed to work so very, very well. Well, they probably would have worked even better if it hadn't been for Hal. Yeah, so really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Beef Dad. So this really would have been during the space race, wouldn't it? During the 60s. Because I think this would have been a year before the moon landings. Yeah. So it's really the height of interest of space travel. So seeing this film and going to the cinema and seeing how breathtaking this film is, like when they go to the moon, it's really effective, and the spacesuits look really good, and the whole sceneries with them, I know they're models and things like that, but they just look so effective. And they are like Star Wars. When it's panning across the screen and you can see the model going across, you think, oh, I could be watching a Star Wars film. So Alex is correct in that sense. And the inside of the ships, with when like the guy's jogging in the circle around the ship like that, it just looks so good. It looks so good. Or where that one character is, she walks up the side like that and then goes upside down and walks through a doorway. You know, it just looks so effective. I know it's probably in a way simply done, because most effects are quite simply done with a few tricks of the camera, but it looks phenomenal. And the sound of this film, apart from the breathing, is brilliant. The film, the score for this film is phenomenal. I mean, it's got some of the most classic space sounds that you can think of. You know, it is absolutely brilliant. However, there is a big problem. It's so dull. It's absolutely boring. It's tedious. It goes along at a snail's pace. And it's just basically shot after shot of a very slow scene of a spaceship moving slowly towards another spaceship to dock. And it'll literally take half the film to dock. And it's just a lot of complications. What am I trying to say there? You know, it's just a lot of shots of other shots of scenery. There's a lot of scenery shots, and there's a lot of still images that they're just moving around, and especially towards the end, where it's clear the director's just got a new computer or something like that and got some new software and just wants to play around with the colors, because he just goes all over the place with the colors towards the end, of changing the sky green, the landscape blue, and everything like that. I did like the beginning with the monkeys. I thought the monkeys, the apes, they were a brilliant costume, and the way their mouths moved, and you could see their lips moving, so it showed their teeth. I thought that was very good and very effective. And there's a scene where a leopard, I think it is, attacks one of the apes. That's a really good scene. But yeah, the film itself, it wasn't for me. I'm glad I've watched it, but I wouldn't watch it again in a hurry. But there is one silver lining. It's not the worst film that I've watched this week. So let's go to Susan and Alex for favourite moments, if they've got any, and if they can hear us.
Yeah, we can hear you finally. Let me see. My favorite moments have to be I love the little bit of intrigue about the what's it called? The monolith on the moon. I thought that was really something super cool, and I thought that I enjoyed the part where they were where Dave is uninstalling all of Hal's informational matrix.
And Hal starts singing Daisy.
And Hal starts singing Daisy.
Daisy, Daisy.
And I also enjoy the bit at the very end where Dave is evolving himself to another form, probably called a star baby, or I guess that some people have referred to him as a star child. Anyway, the baby looks just like Dave, so Dave is still here. And I think that those are my three favorite moments. I had something that I didn't really like, but I will get back to that after Alex has had a chance to do his favorite moments. So here he is.
I like I said, Arthur C. Clarke, I do like some of his ideas. The movie is overlong, but again, it's also a different decade, and it is the height of the space race. And people also went to the movies to see, again, I think people forget, now that we've been so lazy with the internet and movies on TV and all this, that this was back in the day, back in the 60s, that was the only way you could see a movie, was in the theater. So if you imagine sitting in the theater, I mean, this probably looked like absolutely wonderful. You probably were actually transported to another world, another universe. And that's probably what it is. And we've gotten very spoiled because the computers and the smartphones and the internet and the Netflix and all that has really spoiled us to remember a day and age when you didn't see that every 5 minutes. You couldn't watch, things like this all the time. They did film part of this movie with tax credits. It did make its money back, obviously. I'm forgetting about some TV versions. I don't know if they edited it. My favorite part is when they're walking on the spaceships. And of course, they don't seem to address the weightlessness issue as well. The other moment I like is when they're eating food, when they're watching the mini screens. So in a way, that predicted the smartphones and the tablets before they became where everybody uses them now. So in a way, they're watching a tablet while they're eating a TV dinner, or they're eating a dinner, and it seems to change in between shots, and you don't know if they're sideways or upside down or whatever. The other part I like is Hal. Like I said, I think a TV producer actually ripped that off for Knight Rider. But I still liked it. As far as the Star Baby, yeah, it's hopeful. I mean, it's sort of an upbeat ending, sort of. But that's the other thing, too, that a lot of people like the science fiction where they don't explain everything. And, of course, it did become a book series, even though it wasn't originally. And there was a sequel in 1984 called 2010. And that had a lot more talking, and that was a lot more city-based. And some people liked it, and some people didn't. I only remember certain parts of that movie, but that is the sequel. My mother loves the book series. I know she had it. Unfortunately, we've had internet outages here, and she didn't want to stay, so she can't say her opinion. But she does like the movie a lot. Like I said, I'm more of a TV sci-fi person. I think they should do more on TV. So I like it, but only certain parts.
So Alex, did the book come after the film then? Did the books come after the film?
Yeah, because
right.
originally Kubrick went back to Clarke for the sequel 2010, but that's a lot more Earth-based.
Ah.
So in that sense, a lot of people didn't like it because you missed and there was a lot of dialogue in that movie, a lot of dialogue.
Kubrick had nothing to do with 2010.
Well, according to Kubrick, and like I said, my mother had the book, so I mean, even he is like Stephen King in the sense that he suggests a plot or an idea, and another writer works.
It was made by a different group of people.
Yeah, well, but it has his name and it has his product on it, Tim. So Wikipedia
doesn't mean it's made by him, though.
It's not. Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. Sorry.
All right. Well, either way.
The director of that was Peter Hyams.
Yeah. No, I know. It says that too.
Oh, so you know that then?
Yeah, I know that part. Well,
Just
if I'm
lying
wrong,
to our audience.
guys, it's an opinion anyway. I wasn't a witness to it, so I can't swear for sure that it's true.
Right, Susan, what didn't you like? You were going to say a moment that you didn't like.
it's okay. It's kind of water under the bridge now. And perhaps it's slipped my mind, so never mind.
Was it the breathing?
No, the breathing was fine. I don't remember. It's all right. We'll get back to it later.
Yep. All right. Well, go to Texas Tim for favorite moments.
Well, actually, I'd like to address what you were saying about the slowness of it. I do think that's deliberate, though. It's deliberately slowly paced to give you the general idea of how space is and how space travel is. Just think about it. Anytime you get on a plane, how boring that is. You have to wait in the lines, check in, get on the plane, wait for it to take off, wait for them if they have delays.
Yeah, but that's why traveling is boring. I don't want to watch a film about it.
No, I get your point. I was going to say, because I've had discussions with younger people about this film as well, and some of them, they refuse to watch it because they've heard it's such a bore. And I think that's missing the point, because basically, I think it's more of an art film. It's more of it's something you should try and experience at least once. I mean, like you know, there's your list of 100 great films or whatever that you should go check them out, no matter how old they are or how you know what I mean. Like, you might go watch Citizen Kane, for example. You might think, oh God, what was that all about? Who cares? Or but you know what I mean? There's a list of films you should watch. This is definitely one of them. I can get the point, though, that today's audiences, like somebody that's sitting in the theater watching a 3-hour movie right now, Endgame, is not going to have that problem with this 3-hour film. Whereas this one's 2.5 hours, and it is very deliberately slowly paced. That was my point I was trying to make. And I think that it's the kind of film I would watch maybe every 6-7 years or something, because it is a favorite of mine, but it's not one I would pull out every weekend or something. I get your point on that. I just think it's a beautiful work of art is what I'm trying to say. I think that's what Beef Dad implied as well. It's not your average Star Wars or action film. It's the kind of film that you set time aside to watch it someday, but not very frequently. As far as favorite parts, though, it's really hard to pick him, because it is a deliberately plotted film where it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they're not really that connected in a lot of ways. Like I said earlier, I think the plot kind of shifts, and you're basically just seeing different times in the timeline of mankind, most of which is in the future. So, I mean, it's anybody's guess as to what it all means at the end. But I do think it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I am glad that I've seen this film. I wanted to watch this film. That's partly why we chose it as a group. Because I've never seen it prior, and I thought, well, I'd heard so much about it, and it's been parodied so many times if you've watched the Simpsons episode and things like that. And it's been a film that I've wanted to watch for a while, and I knew it was slow. I did know it was slow going in, because I said to Lee, didn't I, Lee? I said to you, is it slow? Yeah. And but I'm glad I watched it. I am glad I watched it. And I do recommend it for people to watch. Even though I don't like the film, I do recommend you need to see the film. So let's go to Beef Dad for favorite moments.
One of my favourite moments is where the ape first learns to use the bone as a weapon. It starts smashing other bones and then smashing skulls. And then the next thing you see is that he has been using it on the animals, killing the animals, and they are all eating the animals. That was pretty good. I loved the scene on the moon itself. That was really cool. And the space station revolving like that as a wheel in space, and then the spaceship going to park in it, and it's going to the entrance, but it's having to rotate as well. That just struck me as brilliantly done. And yes, basically the finale part with him going through all the effects and then finding himself in a flat, in a house and the inhabitant is himself, but older, much, much older. And yeah, the space child is just so cute that, as I say, when that came up on screen, I just went, wow. And it really blew my mind away. Okay.
Yep, thank you, Beef Dad. It's a bit like, it reminds me of Interstellar a bit. Have you ever seen that? It's a bit like that. That's got a weird ending. It's a bit like this. More fast-paced, but yeah, that goes quite strange at the end. But this film goes very Doctor Who-y. You can imagine Tom Baker's face appearing at one point, can't you? Because it kind of goes into the Doctor Who title sequence. But it does change. It does change tack when it brings in Hal, because you think the film is going one way and about one thing, and then it brings in Hal, and then it kind of has that story with Hal, which then doesn't match up with the story at the end, where it goes all Doctor Who-y, and then he goes into that flat, and then he sees two versions of himself, really. He sees the one where he's sat at the table eating, and then when he's in the bed at the end dying. And then, of course, then you got the baby. Lee, explain to me what the baby's about, please. And then
is that not some form of rebirth, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but a giant baby in space.
He's evolved.
As an Earth or a planet or the moon. I don't know what it was meant to be.
It's your own interpretation. I've got to agree. There is this has you can see where George Lucas has got a few ideas from, and also as well, I think this inspired David Lynch with the room scene as well. That was so Twin Peaks.
Definitely.
It's yeah, the baby. You make of it what you will. It is for me. He's dying. He's reborn as the space baby. This is the new form of life, apparently, something like that.
How is he going to eat?
Oh, God. Don't you think too much into things, you know?
But it's not about whether or not he's eating. It's about whether.
Well, it is, because he'll die.
If he's made of stardust, he doesn't need to eat unless he needs to eat comets or asteroids. He's just gonna, keep going to the stars.
Comets and asteroids. That's not part of his 5 a day.
Well, I mean, again, he is alive. I mean, that's the other thing, because even though we're critics unpaid, there was a lot
critics
of
unpaid
critics, right? Even on YouTube, saying that's the wonderful part about science fiction, is that it's still on a hopeful note. It's not that you see like a dead person at the end of the movie and the movie ends that way. You have this sort of humanoid, almost like a space womb or a space
orb,
baby orb, looking next to the Earth with a very kind of hopeful face. Like when a baby.
That's true. It's a hopeful message for the future is basically what it implies. Right. That man continues to evolve, but in what way and how much it has it to do with these monoliths. I mean, that's another thing that you question when you discuss this film is, what is their involvement? Who are they? What are they? Are they just part of the universe? Are they controlling the universe? I mean, and how do they do it? So just because this looks like a baby doesn't mean it's a baby. So I mean, it's
right.
It's like I can't believe it's not butter.
Very fun. No, but what I was going to say was, and that's what Tim Tim is saying the same thing I'm saying is it's a hopeful message. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, but we will be, hopefully alive.
Well, I believe in the
there
furry
is life.
paradox.
Yeah. Well, it may be a paradox as well. But of course, that's the other reason why you guys might like the movie is that it doesn't explain everything like a TV show would have to do. A TV show would have to explain, why are we seeing this?
I think that's why it's a masterpiece. It's completely ambiguous. You don't have any idea. I mean, there's no correct answer. We could sit here and discuss this for 25 hours, and not one of us will be right or wrong.
Believe me, we will.
We will.
What's that again? What was that again?
I said, you believe me, we most probably will sit here for 25 hours.
But like I said, I mean, yeah, if you're seeing this on a beautiful screen, or if you're seeing this on a really wide, I mean, it must look absolutely, absolutely breathtaking. Maybe that was part of the reason for the film too, is that you're in a spaceship by watching what you see on the screen.
Another thing about the length too, if I could just say also, keep in mind this was the first time you'd seen a film like this. We mentioned how Lucas probably was inspired by some of these special effects, and Beef Dad pointed out the beautiful scene where the ship lands inside the space station, and of course it takes several minutes, and it is, if you're, but you take those kind of shots for granted today when you watch a Star Wars movie where it just all happens so quickly and they have space battles and whatnot.
And
whereas
sound in space as well.
Well, this is which isn't real. And this is the first time, and that's another thing Kubrick shows you, the reality of the silence of space. Because, for example, when Poole is murdered by the computer, we see him struggling in space. You don't hear any sound, but he's lost all his air. He dies almost instantly, probably. And that's just silent. It's silent. It's very, very tragic. I mean, it's and that's the message is conveyed by the film, is that silent. That space is silent and deadly. I mean, it's so huge. Also, I mean, you get that impression too.
And that's why you just hear the breathing.
Yeah. I think that's why that puts you into his frame of mind probably as well.
You're in his helmet, yeah.
The actor's very good. He does a lot with his expressions. He doesn't have a lot of lines to say, so they have to convey their thoughts. And this guy looks utterly betrayed by this robot. I mean, not robot, computer.
The computer.
Because he's on his own, and he really has to come up with a plan to get back into the ship to defeat the computer, which is very impressive, I think.
Can I figured out what it is that I was struggling with. I struggled with the fact that the one pod was controlled by Hal, and the other pod was able to be separately controlled. That Hal didn't try to kill Dave in the other one, and that to me was a little sort of sideways. And the other thing that I noticed about Hal was that the computer interface with the little red thing and the black box around it, is the same exact shape as the monolith.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It was like one thing is looking at you and trying to better you, and the other thing is looking at you and trying to kill you. And that was, I mean, that's what I noticed.
So Hal is the advanced version of the monolith then? Futuristic version of the monolith. Is that what you're trying to say?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, well, the other thing...
the thing is with this film, you can say that it's clever. You can say that it's smart. But is it because it's so vague, really?
Okay.
You can interpret it in any way. And is that clever, or is that not clever, if you know what I mean? Is that lazy?
That doesn't matter. But here's the other thing.
Of course it matters. Don't you say it doesn't matter?
Well, again, water and dirt are actually good. But if you're underneath it...
Well, I know which one I'd rather be drinking and which one I wouldn't.
Right. No,
Alex.
But what I'm saying is, it was also good that Dave found a way to get away from Hal. And that's the other thing that you wonder about, because, as Tim says, it's so ambiguous.
Yeah, but is that good that it's ambiguous? Or is that bad?
Yeah, actually, some people like that.
Because if it hadn't been done this way or this ambiguous, we wouldn't be talking about it 50 years on. It would be a science fiction movie from 1968 that was...
Yeah. This movie was a big risk to take for Stanley Kubrick, for the film company. I mean, back then, and he comes up with this idea. Oh, you mean you want to do it like this? You want to, because they'll have had all the scripts, they'll have had all the
Oh yeah,
out,
yeah.
and
Breathing. Next scene, breathing.
Space Baby. What a big risk for Kubrick to put towards the film company.
Yeah.
So ambiguous. Yeah, I
Did
agree.
he understand the film himself? He might have just not understood it himself. It might have been ambiguous because he didn't understand what he was writing.
Kubrick was one of the best directors ever.
Yes.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't spoon feed the audience. He kind of let them make their own conclusion.
Did any of his movies ever have a specific morals to the story, or a specific overarching concept?
Well, I think the moral of the story is don't trust computers.
I don't think so.
Well, was The Clockwork Orange also his movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've not seen that one either.
That one's probably more of a risky film, I would think, because of the
And
violence.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah,
Eyes Wide Shut, The Shining.
It was banned in a lot of places.
Was he?
Yeah.
Was this film banned as well?
Hmm?
Was this film banned
No.
in places?
No. Clockwork Orange would have been banned in loads of.
Clockwork Orange was banned, yeah.
Yeah, because of the rape scene in the house, yeah.
You've got to remember, he also did Doctor Strangelove.
Yep. So there you go.
Mm.
It was a director what never shied away from a
No.
particular subject, and people like him for that. You say he is one of the top directors of the time.
Yeah, he also directed Spartacus.
Mm.
Oh yeah. And that was sort of ambiguous in a way.
Well, even the ending of The Shining, that's a very ambiguous ending. You really can't explain it. I mean, but that's what he likes to do. He's like, you go figure it out. Here's the movie. Go work it out.
Yeah, that's what.
And Stephen King didn't like that movie, or maybe he changed his mind. But I think
made him a lot of money though.
Yeah. So there you go.
Right, are we done? Should we go to final sound score? Let's start off with Beef Dad.
Okay, a piece of real cinematic magic. Effects that had never been attempted before, done for the first time superbly. Yeah, I just loved it. And as I say, my father loved it, so in honor of my father, it gets a 10 from me.
Thank you, Beef Dad. Let's go to Alex and Susan.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, my idea is that this is one of the richest motion pictures ever. It is so sweeping in its scope, and it's definitely amazing in its projection. And I did see a few things about this that really intrigued me, and saw them afresh. I've seen it probably. I used to own this. I saw it probably 100 times before, but seeing it this time I had like new eyes and stuff, and when I saw
that might just be that you got new glasses.
Thank you. But the trippy bits were really trippy for me now in a different kind of way. It was amazing to me. So yeah, that's that. I'll give it 10 monoliths out of 10.
Susan, you just like the trippy bits at the end.
I do like trippy bits.
It takes you back. Oh, she remembers those days.
Trippy bits.
When she was in California. Hey.
Anyway, here's Alex.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7. Maybe actually.
Alex, where are you putting the camera? That's it. That's supposed to be.
Well,
Not at the dentist.
On the phone for sorry, I haven't been on the phone for Zoom in quite a while. I'd give this a 7. Of course, visually, it probably did inspire a lot of directors, George Lucas, maybe even Close Encounters with Spielberg. It inspired it a little bit. Is the movie clever? Yeah, it's clever because we're still discussing it 50 years after. Yes. Would I like things more explained? Yes. I'm more of a TV sci-fi person. If it was TV, I think they would have had to explain more. On the other hand, it would be a mini series as far as the TV goes. I do like Hal. I do like the fact that it sort of reminds me a little bit of Knight Rider. The ending is hopeful. As I mentioned before, there's sequels. And there's book sequels, and if anybody likes the movie, maybe they'll try to look for the book series and see if they agree. But yeah, whether you love it or hate it, people do like the idea. It does divide a lot of people, so it definitely made an impression, more than an impression. Because everybody that I've met that has ever seen this movie or has read the books, they definitely have an opinion on it. So it definitely made a huge, huge impression.
Yep, thank you, you two. Let's go to Texas, Tim, for his final say and score. Then we'll go to Lee.
Well, I think I'm with beat that on this one. It is a bit of magic. It's a great piece of modern cinema from 50 years ago. I mean, it really is a wonderful movie. And I'm going to give it a 10 as well. I think it's something everybody should watch at least once.
So we got 3 10s, 1 7. Lee, are you going to go higher or lower than a 10?
One of my favourite moments watching it this week was you messaging me saying, "Is there something wrong with the movie? I'm about 3 minutes into it. It's just
there's no picture." I thought because it was sound, there was music, but there was no picture. I thought there was something wrong with the, what I watched it on.
I just said, sit there and watch it. It'll come to you. As it's been said, it is a work of art. The effects, the models, the sceneries. I don't think it. To be honest, I don't think they've been bettered. To be honest, because they just look so awesome on the screen. You watch all the Star Wars stuff, you can see this, good, but this is for my.
You mean the old Star Wars, the original Star Wars?
Yeah, like Star Wars Empire and all that.
So you think those look worse than this film?
I think 2001's visual imagery is far superior, and it's
I would agree, especially the space. The models were good in Star Wars, but the space is better in this film.
Yeah, and also the trippy bits at the end. Yeah, it messes with your head, but all in all, from beginning to end, I enjoyed it. And as everybody said, it's leaving you with more questions. And if a movie does that, it's done its job. So
not really.
It gets a 10 from me.
Oh no, I'm going to be the villain of the piece. Oh no.
Why do you think I did it?
All right, Tim might want to cover his ears for this one. Okay, look, the visuals were amazing. The model work, everything, every scene was visually brilliant. I would say apart from where it starts going towards the end, where it's just changing the colours of landscapes that they've found stock footage of Earth and they've just changed the colour. of the landscapes, you know, by inverting the colors or whatever it's called, making the sky blue and the grass orange and things like that. I just think that just looked, I didn't think that looked particularly great, to be honest. I think that was the weakest point of the visuals. But everything else was perfectly fine visually. And the score is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. It's got some tracks that are iconic, with space themes and things like that, and they're from this film.
Thus spake Zarathustra, and some Strauss waltzes like the Blue Danube and stuff. Yeah.
However, the rest of the film is boring because it's a lot of traveling. It's just a lot of ships going past in slow motion, taking ages to get to this other ship. And it is just like watching, you know, just you sat outside your window just watching a bus go by or something like that. You know, it's dull. In many places, it's utterly dull. The ending, it don't make sense. And I don't believe he knew what he was doing. I just think he just cobbled something together. He couldn't think of an ending because he hadn't come up with a story. And he just cobbled something together and just said, hey, slap that on the end. And everybody thinks it's a work of genius. Well, I would say it's a work of genius because I think he's managed to fool you all into thinking it's a work of genius. So for that reason, I'm going to give the film a 4.
Oh, lower than me.
So, there we go. I'd like to thank everybody here for joining me. But you wait till I review Aquaman next. You wait. Thank you for joining me. Comment below what you made of this film, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Look after yourself. Take care. We will see you next time.
That's funny. Oh, dear.